Never mind. Hang on.
Mr. Timing himself.
No one told me about this. I had a late flight last night, and I wake up and I'm like, what the fuck's happening?
It is not your fault.
Okay.
All right, hang on.
I was scrambling. I just made a cup of coffee. All right.
Let me fix this instead. Hang on. Let me get this ready. It'll just take a second. I knew this was going to happen too. All right. Let's see there.
Forgot you had a 3-up for game night.
I know, right? I have a 4-up
looks
I'm going
good.
to use. It's crazy.
Oh, you have a 4-up too? Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see here.
Weird.
I know. It's very weird. Chat, how are we sounding with the sound juice? That good?
Oh, I guess the
Gargle it
leaves
up.
have fallen, so now this is the situation with the sun in the morning.
I was gonna say, is it just suddenly really sunny over you, Dan?
Well, the leaves have fallen.
You
Yeah.
know what direction your house faces?
It's north, right?
Yes, exactly.
Jeez.
The
It's
North
up.
Sun.
You know, north, up.
Jesus Christ, this is a lot.
All right, here we go.
It took so much for me to understand as a child that north doesn't mean up.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's a pretty
There
good
were-
joke in City Slickers. There's a
Right.
pretty
Oh,
good joke about that, yeah.
Yes.
I've never seen City Slickers.
I mean, it's just like it's Billy Crystal being schmaltzy Billy Crystal,
Well,
like in the
that
West,
sounds- that
you know.
sounds good.
Wow,
I
I
rem-
mean,
I remember him
admit it.
shitting on Jack Palance for a while he's at the fire, and then he's like, he's right behind me, isn't he? And I remember that got a big laugh. Remember?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you know,
Curly.
there's a couple.
Yeah. Is
Is that
Daniel
the first time that
Stern.
joke happened, you think? What's the first
No.
time someone did
First time I
that?
remember.
That was it.
So, he's right behind me, isn't he? Yeah. Okay.
The second one is like oddly funny too, I think, or maybe just my like 10-year-old brain watching it on HBO like over and over again.
I remember being weirded out because you just see a deer get born in like the first
Oh,
one. It's like
shit,
showing
that's
us what
right.
the fuck? That's how it happened. Because I never saw that video in school. I still haven't. So like I haven't seen what it looks like for shoot when a baby comes out. But I saw the deer in City Slickers, and that fucked with me.
Yeah, how old were you? You would have been like a kid. That would have been pretty, but like, oh, okay, that is.
Yeah.
Well, they're like
Yeah.
PG-13s,
But
right?
birth is a
Those are
violent
right.
act. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, 91 was the first one. So I
That's
was
the only like
9.
shoot birth I've ever seen is in City Slickers, actually.
That's not weird. Yeah.
Right?
No,
I can't tell if you're being sarcastic.
No, I'm
Yeah,
not.
a deer birth
I'm-
compared to human
I think I'm
birth
trying
is
to
like
talk myself
picking
into
a
like this is
booger.
not a weird Dan thing. This is a normal thing. I'm
Yeah,
talking
no,
myself
this
into
is
it.
normal.
Now.
But
Yeah.
it's like so far. I mean, a deer birth is like you don't even need to shower after a deer birth compared to like a
Oh,
human birth.
Oh,
That's
I didn't even think of the
easy
shower.
peasy stuff. Yeah.
What about Ace Ventura and the Rhino?
That's super realistic.
That counts as a birth.
That might as well be a documentary.
Did you know Billy
David
Crystal?
Attenborough talking about what's that?
Did you know Billy Crystal was in the 2010 hit movie Tooth Fairy?
No.
No.
Jan, did you just
I
watch Tooth
saw
Fairy or
that.
something?
No. I'm just looking up Billy Crystal's IMDb, and
Oh,
I
okay.
forgot he was in Monsters Inc.
Oh, I haven't seen the Rock Tooth Fairy, but I've seen the Larry the Cable Guy Tooth Fairy.
There's two?
Yeah, he's in Tooth Fairy 2.
Yes.
It's Larry the
Is it-
Cable
is
Guy,
it-
yeah.
Is it TWOOTH Fairy? Is it?
It better
did they
be.
put
I don't
two in
think
there?
it's not that clever.
No,
You're giving this movie too
no.
much credit.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's a shame. Okay,
Yeah.
I think we are ready to go. There we go. Sorry, everybody, that you were looking at a black screen there for a second.
Look at that.
Hey, Andrews.
Beautiful.
Okay, that looks good. I'm gonna fade to black and bring us in.
All right.
All right, here we go. In 5, 4, 3. Welcome. It is time to review a video game here on Giant Bomb. It's Spider-Man 2 season, everybody. Marvel's Spider-Man 2 is going to be out here at the end of the week. The review embargo is up. We've all been playing it. We being, I'm Jeff Grubb. I'm joined by Jeff Bakalar, Dan Reichert, and Jan Ochoa. Boys, how are you doing? Are you guys ready to talk about Spider-Man?
No.
No.
Most certain. No. Okay, I am. I can't wait to talk about
I
Spider-Man.
just woke
2.
up and the sun's in my eyes.
I
Yeah.
thought this was a casual conversation amongst friends, and then you say the word review.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're not.
You give your
Yeah.
review impressions, but I'm going to need a score, and that's going to be binding. We're going to hand that over to Metacritic, whatever Janet Choa says. Let's see. So this is the sequel to Spider-Man, came out in 2018. They also had Miles Morales. They're bringing kind of both games together in this one. It is PlayStation's big game for the fall. Everything's lining up for this to be a blockbuster. The original Spider-Man, a very successful game. I really, really liked Spider-Man. I think I liked Miles Morales even more. Not necessarily the story stuff, but the I think it was more concise, more focused. Going into this one, I was like, I hope they learned the lessons there. And I'll say overall, my initial impressions are that they did, and it is a more focused game. It is not like some sort of elaborate new take on it, but I don't think I was ever expecting that. I think it's a pretty solid game overall. What's your initial impressions, Jeff Bakalar?
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you. I was not expecting any wild evolution from 1 and 1.5. I call Miles Morales 1.5.
Sure,
but
yeah.
it's, I think they have really finessed and fine-tuned the system that this game kind of operates on, and I have absolutely been enjoying the hell out of what I've played so far. About 8 hours or so, and I think they've really zeroed in storytelling in this one. I think the storytelling in this game, opposed to the last two, is really like hit its stride, and that's probably for me, like, pound for pound, the biggest tangible evolution from the other two. This game just plays so effortlessly, and I think that's a big part of what we kind of miss with critiquing stuff. Where, like, I sometimes fight games, right? Like, I sometimes fight games to have it play the way that, like, I want to feel comfortable playing, and this game is not that. I think they really fine-tuned combat in a way that I found super frustrating in the first Spider-Man. I think they've done something really interesting with your gadgetry, allowing you to spin all those plates in a more logical and kind of sensible way. For me, out of the gate, that and the storytelling is probably the first two things that I really found to be vast improvements. We could get into the combat overall as we keep talking here, but yeah, I mean, front to back, I'm absolutely loving what I'm playing.
How about you, Dan? What are you thinking about the game?
So I played about 25 hours of it, I would say. And it was kind of a roller coaster for me because I also really liked the first one. I like the old ones too, the old like Spider-Man 2, the Neversoft stuff and everything. I struggled with the beginning. I didn't like the beginning. I didn't think it was the best first impression. It's a big, I mean, this isn't a big spoiler. It's literally the first thing that happens in the game. There's a big Sandman fight. And it reminds me of, remember in the God of War 2, the first God of War 2, it starts that big Colossus of Rhodes thing.
Yeah.
And it's such a cool, big, it's definitely a gimmick, but it works. It's like, oh, you've got this giant monster rampaging, but you're fighting, you're taking it down. There's all these quick time events. And I think this is before, obviously God of War, kind of made quick time events a little stale, and we kind of moved away from that. And, but even back then, you were playing a lot of that. You were fighting the Colossus. The hand was coming down, and you're trying to get your combos in and crowd control and all that. I feel like the first half hour to hour of this game kind of plays itself in a way that I was like, man, this feels very dated to me. And it's very big and expensive and pretty.
Yeah.
And like if somebody walked in on this that didn't play video games and saw it, they're like, holy shit, video games have come far. And they're right. I mean, it looks absolutely incredible. But I just felt like everything from the way I was swinging to the combat cues I was given and everything was just kind of waiting for that. All right, R1's popping up on the screen. Square's popping up on the screen. It's clearly making me swing in this direction towards this. It all feels very, very on rails. And so I was really not into that beginning. And then once it opened up, I loved it. I mean, it is a really, really great open world. Moving around to Spider-Man is like one of the best open world protagonists you can be. The swinging feels better than ever. The switching between Miles and Peter is great. The map has been blown out to have, Queens and Brooklyn and Astoria, all that stuff. So really good stuff there. And as I moved on, I liked the skill trees a lot. I liked the open world stuff. And I felt like it struggled in the big moments, because the big moments all kind of felt like the game was playing itself for me. Or like, these flashback sequences where it's like, oh, we're back in high school and we got to sneak into the school and get a USB drive. It's like, doesn't feel open at all. It's like, here's the part where we're going to climb on the ceiling. Here's the part where I'm supposed to dangle down from this particular thing and steal a thing from a pocket. So I really learned to not like the big story missions. I loved the open world mission stuff. And then there was stuff like in these small little side moments that really, really, I thought it shined. I won't spoil exactly what happened, but there's a side mission called Find Grandpa. And I don't know if you guys played this, but it's, I'm not a Marvel guy, not a Spider-Man guy, and I'm generally
but you
just
are
not
Grandpa.
Yeah, that's right. I'm just not even like really a story guy. And I've talked before, I like games don't really get to me or anything. I don't really get emotional or anything like that. And I did catch myself at this like random side mission in Spider-Man 2, kind of like welling up a little bit. And I was like, holy shit, this is the last thing I expected from the Spider-Man game, was this really sweet little side mission that caught me completely off guard in a really great way. Like the game has a ton of heart in these moments.
Yes.
I think, yeah, it's the big stuff that turned me off. The storytelling, like the actual direction and everything of the cutscenes, and the way that like when you swing into an area and you in your suit, come right into the thing, like everything is just seamless. It's so incredibly well made. But I found what you were doing in the story missions, I thought they were too long. I thought they were too linear.
Too many of them, right?
Too many. So that's the thing.
Yeah.
So that's my ultimate thing with this game is I did like all the side stuff for the most part. I did almost every side mission. I saw all of the skill trees, almost filled out all 3 of them. There's one for both of them together and one for each protagonist.
That's right.
And I was really, really into all that. I like bought all the suits, bought all the extra suits tied to those. And then I got to 21 out of 31 main missions. And I'd pretty much done all the open world stuff because I kept putting off all the story missions because I wasn't liking them. And when I saw that was kind of all I had left was the story missions, and I started the next one, it was like another one of those, like, I'm Mary Jane and I got to sneak around. And I was just like, man, I can't do. And this might be an hour-long mission. I don't like any of these. And I just put the game down at that point. So I don't think I'm going back to it. But I really, really enjoyed a lot of that open part of the game,
Jan, how does that sound to you? Does that kind of echo how you feel? Did you have a different experience?
Yeah, that Dan's take echoes a lot of my own experience with it. I feel like the game really shines and really helps display why Spider-Man, the character, and not just Peter Parker, but the character Spider-Man as Miles Morales as well, does really well in those smaller moments and like those person-to-person, like, oh, Spider-Man is just a dude. He isn't some all-seeing god or anything. And those bigger story moments do kind of take away from my enjoyment of the game. I had a little bit of a problem with the beginning of it as well. It felt like a little bit too on rails, but once, like Dan said, once it got going, everything started clicking into place and everything. And I kind of enjoyed how the story was in Spider-Man 1. I enjoyed those story beats just because I enjoy those characters more so than other people in Spider-Man's rogues gallery. But as the story was progressing and unfolding here, if you were at all a fan of any of the comics from any of the Spider-Man series, there's a lot of homages. There's a lot of little nods and like, hey, I know that guy. Oh, this looks like this.
Yeah.
And it's really neat. The way that they handle the switching is seamless and really fucking neat. And it's really cool. And it feels organic when you come across Miles or you come across Peter when you're playing as the other. And it really adds to the feeling of like, oh, there are 2 Spider-Men here.
Right.
It almost made me want like a mode or something where it's just the 2 of you all the time and you're tackling stuff together. I really like how they managed to add little story bits that felt insignificant at first, but started to build on top of each other as you started accumulating and doing them. I don't want to spoil the specific story bits, but there are different, let's say, factions within the world that start building up and picking up momentum as you take on the different story missions. Some of them feel very inconsequential at first because like, oh, just stop this robbery, stop these bad guys, go to this point, go to that point. But as you build up, it really feels like it actually matters in the greater world of Spider-Man. I didn't mind the Mary Jane sections as much. They kind of give you.
They're not as bad as the first one. They are. It is still like there's still a lot of that kind of stuff, but I think it's better than it was in the first game, which I don't know if that's saying much.
But it's not just Mary
much,
Jane. It's like there is stuff like that. The high school one I was talking about, which might as well, like, you've got Spider-Man powers, but you're very confined with like, okay, you can zip to the ceiling when the security guard comes to look for you,
Yeah. But I think like the combat really sings. I think they have finally nailed down the combat in a way that in my head has surpassed like the Arkham games, where as Batman, you kind of felt invincible as long as you're nailing the timing. Here, it's not only nailing the timing of the combat and everything, but like really utilizing all of the tools that they give you, and they give you an obscene amount of tools. Like
it all
felt
flows
like a
into
rhythm
each other, right? They all flow into one another really well, right?
Yeah, like when you're playing Guitar Hero and you nail like a 20, 30 note combo.
Yeah.
It feels like that here. And
I was surprised. Sorry, I interrupted. Go ahead.
Oh no. Go ahead, Dan.
I was just going to say that, like, when you look at those skill trees, especially when there is one for each character and one for both, and they all have these different. Okay, this one, if you hold in triangle while you're in the air, this will do this, and you can grab a gun from this and throw it back at a guy. Like, I kept thinking that, like, this is going to be too much, and I'm going to forget all this
It's
stuff
only a
and
couple
have
of
to
buttons,
keep going
right?
back.
Yeah,
It
there's
really
not
is
that much. Yeah.
And just the language of just like, okay, so this one is all my web stuff. So yeah, there's a million different web yank things you can do, but they're all kind of tied to triangle.
And they all build on top of one another. So it's like now it's doing a little bit extra. So it's it's easy to learn.
Yeah, it felt really cool with, like, a lot of that crime in progress stuff is going on where it's like you could just kind of swing in above it and I would just like fly over them. I would hold in Y to like zip down and be like, what's up, motherfuckers? And then immediately start killing them all in like really like stylish, cool ways that was not, linear at all. It wasn't one of those Simon Says things. I was deciding like, I'm going to web yank you. Now I'm going to throw the gadget down, suck all you guys together, jump up, venom punch the ground. It, like, all of it flowed together really, really well. Like the game's super strong. I never got tired of the combat.
Yeah, never got tired of the combat, except in those big boss encounters because it just becomes
I don't like.
Yeah.
I think the boss fights are some of the weakest part. I think the walk and talk stuff is that's the weakest part. There's too much of it. I was like, there's a Coney Island scene, and I'm like, this is pretty good. I'm doing a bunch of like motion control
really
games.
too,
it looked really
right?
good.
Yeah.
It was pretty good character development. I could tell where it was going, and I was along for the ride. And I'm like, this is a good example of PlayStation design ethos of we want things to look big and expensive. We want you to have an emotional attachment to the characters, and we're going to do that through kind of reduced gameplay. It is confined, but you're still interacting. It's showing, not telling. By the end of the game, when it's like the 15th one of those sequences, I'm like, no, this still feels like telling, not showing. It's like they're trying to have their cake and eat it too a little bit there.
I thought about that a lot, especially with like what did Druckmann say like a couple years ago? He was like, we got to figure out how to like not do cutscenes anymore, right? It was basically like narrative exposition has to be like a thing you play. And like, you know what? It's kind of like almost fucking impossible. Like no one's really been able to figure it out in a way that has moved the needle forward, right? In a big way. And
the emergent storytelling is kind of like the alternative there. And if you want to do like a very heavy narrative in something like that.
Totally.
I mean, I think there's ways to do it, but it's not going to feel the same.
No, it's not going to feel the same. And I don't think that's, I think like you do enough like market research and, testing and like, no,
this game's going to sell a lot.
Exactly.
And none of this is going to hold it back. Yes.
So like maybe that's just my brain going into a game like this where it's like, I know I'm going to have to play slower missions that are simply story beats. Like there are missions that are just story beats, right? There are main missions that you have to check off if you want to progress the main story. And you're not really going to play a lot. You're going to watch a thing, or you're going to like vaguely interact with a thing. I think the Coney Island one is probably the best example of that, where like there is a bit of a balance too, because that sort of has like a finale in it that's pretty exciting. I also think the way I'm playing this game to an audience of 2, and this is like family time, and we're like all gathering around, and we're like at the edge of our seat with some of these really interesting plot twists like early on, and I think it's dope. I think like this is a game that is a roller coaster, and you sort of like there's buildups, there's drops, and there's a lot of peaks and valleys, and that's sort of like how it goes, right? There's always like an interlude episode in a season of television. There's always an episode that it's like throwback, and I think as a whole, when you talk about all of the boxes that Insomniac is trying to check here, right? It's kind of like, wow, this to me is a very impressive overall package. I think if you are expecting, if you know what you're getting into going into it, I think you're going to be well served and impressed. And I also think like you're just not going to be able to like watch this and be like, well, this isn't fucking incredible what I'm seeing right now. Like, you're just not gonna be able to sit there and be like, well, I'm bored, right? No, like I think
it's very entertaining.
It's very, very entertaining. For sure.
I think the one thing that bugs me the most in this game, and it's a very
spiders, I get it. Nice.
Yeah, I'm scared of them, guys. It feels like there's been a significant amount of time between Spider-Man 1 and 2, and I'm talking within the world of the actual game, not real life time. And we see Miles grow. Like the character model of Miles definitely has aged. I do not like this little boyification of Peter Parker.
Yeah.
Because I think like it lends more to the character to see him age up as well, because it's like, okay, you have seen some shit, you have been seeing some shit. Let's put a little bit of, I don't know, like
Yeah.
wrinkles on there. Like I
Right.
think that's why the character of Peter B. Parker in the Spider-Verse movies plays so well, because it's like, damn man, you've seen some stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's like middle aged, right?
I mean,
He's
even
like,
Tobey Maguire in
you
that
know.
in the multiverse movie that they did, where it was like that was the best part. It's like, man, he's still Spider-Man. He's still working at it. I like that a lot too. And yeah, some of that was lost for me with the character model change. I'm used to it, but yeah, I don't like I don't know. I look a lot of the character models. They're impressive in a lot of scenes, and a lot of times they look pretty goofy too. I think.
Yeah, it also takes away from like the character arc that they're building for Peter of like, you're Miles's like his mentor.
Yeah.
Like you're his father figure.
Yeah,
and it's
you're
like,
not his swim buddy.
Yeah.
Right.
like and there are moments where like the character model for Miles looks older and more mature than Peter, because Peter looks like
For sure.
Timothy
Yeah.
Chalamet sometimes.
I definitely played as Miles more. One, because like a lot of his new powers are a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And also he's just so much less annoying than Peter. Peter is just, I don't know if that's normal in like just the series, if he's like less of a dorky, quippy Spider-Man, but I definitely preferred him because of that. Like I could use a verbosity slider on Peter.
Dan, so you said you're about 2/3 of the way through the main story.
Yeah.
Did you get the last sort of suit for Spidey that unlocks powers?
I mean, I got about halfway through. There was the one that like suddenly, oh, okay, like here's it's a new type of suit. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if we're talking about the same one. but
Yeah, right. Okay. Yes. I think probably. If not, it's essentially the same thing. How do you guys feel about the we see this in the trailers, the symbiote suit powers on Spidey?
That was a nice surprise. I did not know this was a big Venom game.
Yes.
And I remember
All
from my
nine
little
inches.
yeah. Oh yeah. When I saw it, I was like, oh right. I guess they did like tweet that out or something. So I didn't know that was a spoiler that Venom was in it. But then when I saw him, I was like, oh right, that guy. Like even as someone who doesn't know comics, I just remember from playing the games that Venom's a cool character, and there are parts with him that I don't know if it's people know who the symbiote's tied to or what happens there. But
At the end of the first game, they tease it, but we don't. People are like, we don't know for sure if that's going to be him, but
Right.
Okay. Yeah, it's kind of a fun thing throughout the middle stretch of the game, seeing what's going on with that and how that's developing, and then how that affects you. And I thought, as far as the story stuff goes, that was the most intriguing stuff to me.
Yeah.
The stuff where it's just like, I got to track down this doctor, and I got to, like some of the stuff doesn't hit, but the Venom symbiote stuff was pretty cool.
yeah, I was and like. Due to the story, you know that Peter Parker's eventually going to lose the symbiote suit. Like he can't keep it because he becomes sassy Peter Parker. Which, by the way, I'm over. I am so over sassy Peter Parker because he's got a
Man.
black suit on. That story's so ancient now.
Go ahead, Jeff. Go ahead.
Is maybe the best Peter Parker like Spider-Verse Peter Parker?
Yeah, totally.
Right? Like just
Like the older
just
one?
Like,
Yes.
like new dad Peter.
Oh, yeah,
Like
yeah.
he's absolutely the best,
By
right?
far,
Like
by far the
totally.
best.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Is Nick Cage supposed to be Peter Parker in that? Is Noir
no,
Spider-Man?
he's noir. He's Spider-Man.
Yeah, but is that
noir.
not Peter Parker?
I think that's Peter Parker. Yeah, I think he's an
Well,
Peter
like
Parker.
in the noir.
Yes.
Okay, well then that's
timeline,
the
yeah.
best one. Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, he has 11 words. No.
But I forget where I was going with this. But basically, I just think that the game has a lot going for it in the side quest. Dan, you touched on this earlier. The side quests are the kind of the meat and potatoes here, where it's like they really figured out how to make those feel interesting by turning them into their own mini campaigns. Essentially, they it's not just like the same little thing you're doing over and over again to fill up a check or to mark things off a checklist. There is that aspect to it, but they build up to something and they have a conclusion, and then usually you get some cool rewards at the end. And then there's the smaller side quests, the ones where you found Grandpa. I had one, and this is like such like a video game moment where it's like, hey, this guy is like, hey, my wife died. I have my birds here that I've been taking care of. They're my family now. But I'm going on an adventure. Can you take these birds for me? And I'm like, yeah, sure, man. I'll take the birds to a park and like set him free. And he's all right, cool, all right. And then you're supposed to go back and find him. And of course, he died. And it's like this touching moment. I found it very touching. It's a cool little moment that makes you feel connected to New York, which I think is important for a Spider-Man game. And then as soon as the mission ended, it was like level up, a bunch of XP. Here's what an old man just died, and I leveled up. This rules.
You stole his soul, is what happened.
It was
what is the soul if not XP?
Exactly.
Yes.
That's exactly how I felt.
Souls will have skill points in them. We all know that.
But it's exactly that which highlights the character of Spider-Man as something like that lends itself so well to a video game and a movie. It's like, even though Spider-Man, either of them have all these magnificent powers, it's like you're still having these human interactions in a way that like Batman would never, right?
Yes.
Like Batman is not going to stop and help someone find their grandpa or like shuttle someone
out of your grandpa.
Like he would. Like, there's another side mission where, like, Spider-Man has to go look at people setting off fireworks, right? Batman would punch both of those people to death.
It's illegal. It's illegal. You got to beat the shit out of those kids.
Yeah,
exactly.
Spider-Man's less of a cop, right?
Yeah, but like Spider-Man, it was like, oh, cool. This is why you're doing it. All right, okay, just stop, guys.
I do like that that aspect, like that, like leads into how he treats a lot of his villains, his rogues gallery, where a lot of them are established. Like he is a little bit older. He's supposed to be older. He's supposed to have been around for a while, so he's dealt with a lot of these villains before. And most of, if they're not in jail, they're reformed or trying to be reformed. And so there's like this aspect of he's not just beating up guys because they made a poor decision or because they did a science experiment that ruined their brain. He's not going to punish them eternally for that. It's like, no, they can get better. These people aren't just coded as evil forever. And I like that. And it also, they bring them all into the story in an interesting way. So the setup here is Kraven the Hunter is coming to New York to hunt this rogues gallery, because he's like, wow, this is way better than what I've been finding in the jungle. So he comes and he's like,
than Panthers.
Way better than Panthers. So he's like dragging like Tombstone and all these guys out of retirement. So and the Lizard and all these things.
Yeah, I thought that was cool.
That's cool. Like when you see Tombstone, it's like he's like Carney. He's like working a Ferris wheel. It's like, what the hell? He's got a uniform.
It's a good bit, and I'm like, that's a cool thing to make it feel like make the world feel alive. And make it like there's tiers of these villains, and we know that from like reading the comics. Like that's a jobber. It's like, oh no, that jobber is now just working a job. Like it's a Carney, so it's perfect for him.
You're talking about how they did Mysterio dirty in this, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean the Mysterio is the ultimate jobber though. So yeah,
he's the goober of the road.
But they did him dirty, man.
Oh
they did
boy,
him dirty.
And that spot, the Mysterio, I think the first one with the long DJ minigame and stuff, that made me realize that like there's a lot of minigame stuff in this. There's the like find the corrupted atom. There's a long DJ sequence.
A fair amount of basketball shots in this.
Yeah.
Yes. There's a lot of hold L2 and R2 in the right spot to make the thing spark. There's a lot of there's so much of that stuff.
Yes, there is.
There's two things I want to bring up that you reminded me of, Grubb. First off, mentioning New York, I think it's almost impossible to like properly represent New York in a video game, and I do think this game does arguably some of the best New York stuff.
It's really good.
It's really, really good, and I always appreciate that. So definitely points in that category. And I do think, like you talked about with the side missions, about developing its own narrative. I think that is something really great that this game kind of borrows from the early Batman games, where like those side things are not just these check boxes, right? They are little expositional sort of chapter marks that do tell a story, and I think they were able to like kind of translate that into into the Spider-Man world, which is super dope, as opposed to like how it kind of went the first two games.
Even stuff like the photo missions where you'll just go to a
those are
spot.
cool.
Yeah.
And like they really flesh out like, oh, this is New York. But then Robbie, right? That's the character's name.
From the Daily Bugle, I think.
The editor,
the Daily Bugle. We'll give a little bit of context, and some of the context is really neat. It's like, this is Spirit of New York.
There's like a wrestling thing talking about the history of like wrestling in New York, and so it's like, oh, this is fun.
And it's
it was like, oh, say Bonesaw, say Bonesaw.
I wanted him to say Bonesaw too. That stuff is also like not just thrown in for it as an afterthought. It feels like the people making this game were like, hey, if we're going to use New York City, if we're going to try to like represent like Harlem, because Miles is from there, and they make a big deal about that. Like one of the missions, one of the side quests ends with you going to you're collecting all these things. I won't spoil the specifics of it, but you're collecting all these things, and they're real world objects. And then at the end, it's like they're going to put them in a museum, and you can walk up to them, and you can actually read about them, and it refers to the real people who actually use this stuff and how that relates back to Harlem.
Yeah.
And it was like, I'm like, you know what? This is pretty good. I think, I wasn't like I'm like, oh man, I'm in a museum. This rules. But I'm like, this is a nice touch, and it feels sincere from the development team.
And it doesn't get like, if you are not interested in that, it's not like a stealth mission that you have to do.
Exactly.
Like I thought the work that went into it and the heart and the thought that went into it, I think we're talking about the same side story thing where you're collecting these things. And it's like, wow, this is a level of detail and thought that I'm not used to seeing out of like collectibles or a side mission. And I also go ahead.
I was going to say, and that especially works because there isn't a ton of map barf. It isn't like so many side things. This is a very manageably sized game where it's like, you're not going to get lost if you're going to find these interesting side quests because they are the thing to do, and they all lead to down these interesting paths. I'm sorry, keep going, Dan.
I also want to call out tremendous accessibility stuff going on here. And this is Sony, big Sony first party has always been very good about this. But there were options and stuff here I had never seen before. Like you've got the stuff where there's a huge variety of like, you can open up the timing window and healing options and things like that. But also stuff where like mapping a bunch of shortcuts to the D-pad. If you want to, you can set like game speed, like 30%, 50%, 70% to a D-pad button. So like at any point in the game, if you want to, you could like tap left on the D-pad and it's going at 30% speed if you need that. Or I did it as just like, man, this is actually kind of cool. I can just go into like slow mode, dramatic mode anytime. You can adjust the physics assist on the web swinging. There's just like a huge suite of accessibility options that I saw that. I was like, wow, this is another one of the things that a lot of big games don't put the time into like this level of it. And there's so much here. I think that's awesome.
No, I was gonna say it really is like such a complete package, right? Like I think there's moments like that where you realize like, oh wow, like the flexibility to customize that experience the way you want it, I just think is an amazing thing that I never would have thought would be a reality 10, 15 years ago. And I think that just leads to like all these moments where I just find myself like perched on top of some, water well on top of a building or, on top of like a spire on a bridge. And you're just sort of like, God, like look at the light, especially at night. This game at night is
golden hour is what really got me. I was like that intro sequence that you guys were complaining about earlier, 100% with you. I thought I don't like the intro. Especially thought like the swinging was broken. I was so worried. Like, oh my god, it feels like you're forced.
You were messaging me.
You're like,
is this broken?
Worried.
What's happening?
Yes, I
got really worried.
Break the swinging.
Yeah. Legit anxiety
like, what are you
about
talking about?
Yeah, and so
you guys were just on a roller coaster and didn't realize you just had to stay buckled.
Exactly. Yes. No, that's 1,000,000%. That's correct.
You're just like, sit down, keep your hands.
So you get out of there, and it's like, okay, no, this feels better. But then you start unlocking powers and like, especially traversal powers, and it's like, no, this actually feels incredible, fantastic. And then the way the time works in the game, I don't think it's like a real time clock. Like the scenes are set at different times and it's progressing a little bit. So you get to the golden hour time and it's just like the city looks so beautiful. And by this point you've unlocked so much traversal that you feel really empowered and you're doing all these cool moves. And I think that the wrapping around the corner to like keep your swing going and do
a great
cool
thing to unlock.
That feels good.
And then the flying, we haven't talked about it. This is the best Superman game ever made. This is
well, this
there are
is
parts
like
where you're literally flying through rings.
Yes.
This is the evolution of the Super Mario Brothers cape.
Yes,
done
definitely.
Incredibly
It's
well.
the way to do flying in a game, I think. It feels so good. You feel so cool. And I think that's what if you're going to be flying, I think it's what you need to do. You need to just feel cool.
Like the extra boost, like the extra air dash or
air
like
tunnel
jump that you get as well to like continue the momentum of flying. Just really good.
I was kind of worried it was going to be like a Saints Row 3 to Saints Row 4 thing where remember like Saints Row 3 you could do a ton of stuff that made it yourself very mobile going around the city, but then by 4 it was like, well, now I'm just straight up Superman, I'm just flying around and there's no constraints, and I feel like why would I ever drive around, why would I ever engage with stuff on the ground? This somehow hits that sweet spot where it's like I can basically fly, but there is some sort of physics involved, and you do have to kind of Mario World cape it a little bit or find those little exhaust vents and stuff like that. And it doesn't take you away from, like, you still want to explore down in the buildings and on the ground and things like that. It's, Arkham City kind of had a little bit of that where you could grapple up in Mario World a little bit. But this is, like you said, by far the best version of that I've seen in any game.
It's because I think they really balanced the idea of, like, well, it's still Spider-Man, so we can't, like, just give him, like, infinite flight, right?
Oh,
we
right.
can't do that.
And also, Dan's right. That wouldn't be as fun. Like, it's
Exactly,
more fun
it's
to
not.
have, like, to feel like, oh man, I'm about to skid on the ground. What can I do here? Do I go back to my swing? Do I use my Venom boost or whatever? There's a bunch of options available to you, and you having that control over stuff makes it feel that much cooler.
And that's the beauty of it, right? Because you are juggling, you are spinning a bit of a plate when it comes to, like, just keeping your eye on, like, the most surface level, like, gravity issues, right? We're just like, all right, I can't fly like Superman, but I can at least understand, like, oh, I'm probably gonna need to switch something up right here and jump to a different way to traverse. It's so much fun.
You have so many different tools that, like, you could be flying, and then if you need just a little boost or something, L3 will make you nosedive, and then there's an upgrade where if you go for a nosedive and then you hold the swing, you do a full loop-de-loop, like Inside Out Boys situation, and then fling yourself back up.
You get so much speed that it's a really good thing to do if you are trying to, like, fly somewhere really quick, because you want that speed that really helps with flying or with gliding, I suppose. But yeah, that loop-de-loop was a really cool move. All the stuff you unlock, like, makes it better. Especially, like, there's a you talked about the skill trees. There's a couple other, like, there's the suit upgrades as well. And those have powers linked to, like, what you're capable of doing. People should focus on that, because getting your traversal speed up really unlocks more fun in this game. And it is just called traversal under suit tech or whatever. Put your upgrade points into that, maybe not first, but pretty early on, because you want to be playing as much of this game with your upgraded maximum swing velocity as possible, because it really does a lot there. Go ahead, please, Jan.
I was gonna say that suit tech skill tree thing. I thought it was really cool that, like, you would have a couple that are like, okay, 10% boost, 10% boost, and then there would be a split, like you've seen in skill trees a million times. But you unlock it, but you can toggle between the two anytime you want to. There's no cost or anything. You're not like,
you unlock them at the same time. It's not
this.
A choice. Yes, it's
right.
It's
like you got both of these.
Yes.
Yep. Exactly. It's like, okay, I'm going into combat, so let me flip all these switches on, and now I'm traversing. Let me flip these. So.
I love the fact that, like, you can have a situation where you are not only switching between, like, all the gadgetry stuff, right? Like the gadgetry situations where, like, you can balance, like, oh, I know that I can get an extra shot in my web slinger thing if I do a certain like style of, like, combinations and whatnot. I just think, like you said at the top, like, when you're juggling all that, and in the first couple game where, like, that was just, like, a thing that I probably played that entire game and didn't use half of the gadgetry because I just didn't know it was there. I wasn't directed from, like, a UI experience to, like, gravitate towards that. So I think the fact that this game, like, very much probably realized that, probably had enough data to see, like, oh man, like, players left shit on the table. We need to make sure there's a way to, like, incorporate that. So that's I love to see that stuff. And just even from, like, the cosmetic point of view, like, man, they just went nuts with suits, huh? They just went absolutely bananas. Like, I'm having trouble like moving away from the Scarlet Spider suit because I just love Scarlet Spider so much.
That's going to be what the question Silverstreak in chat asked. What's your favorite suit? Is that your favorite one?
I think Scarlet Spider is, like, my favorite. I don't know if there's, like, more of that, but what they do is they, like, you unlock a suit and then there's, like, 4 subsuits below that, and you're like,
yes, for many of them.
I mean, you're there must be 200 suits in this game, like,
and it's not expensive to get. Like, every single time I unlocked a suit, I was like, okay, I'll hold square to spend 10 tech points or whatever. Then I've got 200 of them. Yeah, those were awesome. And I don't even know, like, the story stuff. Like, some of that, like, I recognize the Spider-Verse suit or this or that. But, like, just visually, all these, like, Miles has a bunch of really cool ones with, like, kind of an electronic face and stuff like that.
And some you're unlocking, but some you are getting as part of the story. Some you get at the end of quests. There's a lot you could do. Get the end if you complete a quest chain. You get a reward at the end of that. There's a lot of ways to get suits, a lot of variety there. We're running low on time, so I got a couple of questions from the chat. Let's see here. Zandrake94 says, does the map cover more neighborhoods? It does. It has queens and stuff. How'd you guys feel about that? I thought this is a pretty good addition. It's not like it's not a game changer, but I'm glad that had the gliding because it made it easy to get through those parts where there's not a lot of big buildings. But I thought that was a good addition. How'd you guys feel about it?
I'm trying to remember, did fast travel work the same? Because I remember you could do the subway in the previous one, but this one it's really cool where it's like once you do a certain amount of activities in an area of the city, you can just fast travel to any point within it. So like, you know, it takes a while to get from like the Upper West Side to Astoria, but if I've done enough stuff in Astoria, I can literally like point at the map and be like, send me right there, and it works. And it's like immediate too. It's just like seamless. Suddenly, like it's a cutscene of you flying in through the air or doing setups on a building or something. It's
they've figured that part out. I don't know what kind of dark magic is happening under the hood there, but like that shit is. You love to see it.
They know how to make a video game.
Yes, they definitely do. Did you guys have any bugs? I had a few audio bugs.
I had a couple.
Just nothing terrible. Stuff that I can live with.
I had audio cut out of just like the music bed fallout.
Sure.
I that was before that Day Zero patch, so maybe that was addressed there.
Right.
A couple times clearing out like an enemy stronghold. There would be like one enemy left, and this idiot was like caught up in some like glitching on some lamppost that I couldn't find, and it'd be like, the mission's not over. Where is this idiot? I gotta find him.
Had some of that. I had a boss fight I had to restart because I went really hard, which is like every one of my powers. I was just like pummeling, and he kept like staggering back until he like staggered into a rock, and he was like inside it, and it seemed like the character couldn't get out. So he had like this much health left, and he was in the rock, and I couldn't get him out. So I was like, all right, I guess I gotta restart this. But overall, it's like very few and far between in terms of that type of stuff. Same. And the amount of times I've just been in awe of what it's pulling off technically far outweighs that.
Great.
Yeah, there's a specific moment. It's kind of a chase sequence where they're definitely pulling all the tools that they've shown you from like the Ratchet and Clank game. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, you're doing that with Spider-Man. That's sick as hell. Let's do more of that. And it made me kind of want like, or see the possibilities of a game using the mechanics of that specific Marvel character.
Yes.
I don't want to spoil anything. But.
Yep. I mean, speaking of spoilers, this is a game that is a sequel to a very successful game. I think it's very likely they're going to make a third one. There are some setups there. We won't talk about anything specific, but how do you guys feel about the setup for a third game, and how do you feel about the conclusion of this one? If you've beaten it. Dan, you beat it?
No, I
that's
stopped.
Right. Okay, all right.
21 missions.
That's
in,
right.
Yeah.
And you guys, the rest of you guys have. Okay, well,
I thought I was close to the end, but then I looked at that progress and it read like 50. I'm like, oh,
actually, if it's at 50, you're probably pretty close to the end of the story. If you've been doing it.
I was at like 65, 70 or something like that, and I still had 10 story missions left. But I had done like all of the other stuff.
You're doing all of the other stuff. Yes, I think so.
Yes,
if you've been doing a good mix, you're probably pretty close to the end.
Got it.
I think the ending is very satisfying. The boss fight, like I don't love the boss fights in this. I think they're pretty samey. They all have the same structure. There's going to be multiple phases, and the phases are going to be like you're going to end with that cinematic sequence, and then you're going to jump to another part of the level, and then you're basically going to do the same fight again, and you're either going to do that 2 or 3 times, and that happens a lot. I think that's one of the things with this game that is maybe its weakness is it has a lot of good stuff, and then it has a lot of stuff that's maybe too much. I like the combat. I think that being like the main thing you do constantly, combat, that did get a little bit old for me. I kind of wish that there would have been some like platforming sequences mixed up in the main stuff, but overall it's like, yeah, the combat's good, but there's just too much of everything in some of these stuff. I think the side quests are where they had that good balance for like there's not too much of that. But yes,
I think this is part of the reason that Miles Morales was such a welcome thing. Yes, because we had all of the like big budget, giant open world map stuff going on without any bloat, really.
Yes,
you know, and like
agree.
this is a really good game, but it's pretty bloated in a few ways. And like I think scaling it back to that Miles Morales level was exactly what that game needed. I could have gone for more on the Miles Morales length than this.
Yes, totally. I think that if you play through the story, you're going to know where the third game is going to go pretty quickly. You're going to have a pretty good idea of who's going to be in there, who's going to be the villain, how that's going to work. So yes, they definitely set up a third game. Finally, we haven't talked too much about it. I think we've all just mostly been impressed. The performance, this is a next-gen only or current-gen only game. Do you guys feel like this takes advantage of the power of the PS5, and are you pretty happy with the performance?
Yeah, the
100%.
variable refresh rate stuff. Like,
Yep.
I've got a C2 OLED, and I turned on all that shit, and you can tell it runs so smooth. Like, just no hiccups. Doesn't matter how much crazy bullshit's happening on the screen. It technically it's maybe like it's definitely in the top 3 like PS5 showcases.
Yeah,
right now.
it's phenomenal. I mean,
not number one.
especially with those melee scenes where you're tag teaming and you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean, just the choreography and all that coming together. It is really wild. There's a whole. Well, I don't want to spoil the character that shows up, but this person is around for a little bit with a little bit of like teleportation, and that shit is just
that's
phenomenal.
Yeah, that scene very good. That's like
super cool.
that's there's the portals.
That's what I was talking about.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
It's
maybe I
very
didn't see that.
reminiscent of Ratchet and Clank. The Rift Apart game.
The site. Yes, there's where
just
you're suddenly yes.
so
yes.
sick.
That's the kind of
That's
thing that
really
I
cool.
think they would be like, we could do this in a Spider-Man movie, but how do we translate that to a game? No, it's perfect here. It's better than it could ever be in a movie. It's
And,
so good.
Like you show up in one spot for like 10 seconds, you're just like, what the fuck am I doing here?
It's such a good game.
Awesome. So awesome.
Yep. All right.
The last thing I want to say is like, God, like I was fearing that Insomniac would feel the pressure of the popularity of the Spider-Verse series, that they'd have to hand fist something. There's something there are little bits and homages to it, but I really love that they stuck to their guns with their versions of the Spider-Man, and not having to like fold to
Agreed.
all right, well, we got to make everything the Spider-Verse.
The biggest strength of the story of this game is the relationship between Peter Parker and Miles Morales. That is it's a really good dynamic. I think it's really smart because we've seen Peter try to explain why he has to do stuff to MJ and to his aunt and all this stuff. And then we've seen that stuff where Miles has to explain it to all these other Spider-Men, and that's cool. But just having like the mentor-student dynamic, and then have it become like, no, now we're kind of equals and we're working together and be partners as like the Spider team. It's really good stuff. I really like that a lot. Okay, that's gonna do it. If you're hearing this in the Bombcast feed, we might do this occasionally in the future, where like, hey, if there's a big game coming out, when we want to have a conversation about it, especially at an embargo time, if it's kind of a little bit off from when we do the show, we might do a little bit more of this in the future. Let us know what you think. Otherwise, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll catch you next time. Thanks, boys.
Bye-bye.
Thwip.
Thwip. Okay, awesome. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
That was great.
That was great. That was fun.